Thank you so much, Dawn. I think one of the things I missed over the summer was hearing Dawn's music. So thank you so much for blessing us with your music this morning. Well, this morning's Time for All Ages is a story that comes from the Jewish tradition, and it comes from the country of Afghanistan. And Afghanistan is a country that's been in the news a lot this week, and it's rather tragic what is happening there right now. So I invite us to take a moment just to send good thoughts to the citizens of Afghanistan who are living in a time of turmoil and fear right now. As I said, Afghanistan is predominantly a Muslim country, but they've had a long history of having a Jewish population. And this story comes from the Jewish tradition. And it's about this person who's called a cobbler. And a cobbler is a person that repairs shoes. Sometimes when our shoes get a bit worn, especially the soles, the cobbler can put new soles on them, or they can patch up holes in shoes. That was not as common nowadays, though. I did grow up with that. But in the old days, shoes were expensive. They're one of the most expensive things people had. And so they would often keep repairing shoes again and again. And that's what this cobbler did. And he didn't make a huge amount of money, but he survived. And the king of his country was a very wealthy person, but he realized he was wealthy, but he still felt unsatisfied with life. He still felt unhappy. And he thought he would go around exploring his country to see what helps people feel satisfied with their life, what helps people feel happy. And so he wandered around and he saw that people had a mixture of happiness and struggle and sadness. But then he was walking through this really poor neighborhood in the capital city of where he lived, and he heard this person singing at the top of his voice. And the person wasn't a great singer, but the person was singing, and he just sounded so joyful. So the king tracked his way through to find, where's this sound coming from? And he eventually found the cobbler, the shoe repairer, in his studio, working away. And the king was kind of dressed really casually, and he didn't let the cobbler know that he was the king. And so he said, can I come in for a moment? I said, I know you seem very happy. And the cobbler said, oh, I'm very content with my life. I don't have everything, but I've got enough food to eat tonight. In fact, I have enough food to invite you to join me for dinner. He said, I've only got like this half of a fish tail, and I've only got some rice and some bread, and I've got a little wine, and I invite you to join me in what I have. And so the king did, and they talked, and the king said, this person really is genuinely happy. He said, and he asked him, have you been tested in your life? He said, oh, I've been tested. I had family and I lost them, but I still feel that I have faith that God will provide for me. I have faith that life, the universe, will provide for me. And the king thought, that's good. So the king went away, and the king was a bit of a trickster, almost in a mean sort of way. He said, I really want to test to see how happy this person is. So the next day he brought a decree that you were not allowed to repair shoes. So the cobbler would lose his profession. And so the king wandered by the cobbler's house the next day, and he still heard that singing. So he went in again and was asking the cobbler how you were doing. And he said, I was worried about you because I know you couldn't repair shoes anymore. And I was wondering you didn't have enough to eat. He said, oh, I don't have much, but I have some, because I was wandering the city and I saw the woodcutters going out to the forest to actually, cut some trees. And they had invited me to join them. So I went out there and I helped them cut down some trees, and I got enough wood to sell at the market to have this food here. Please come and share it with me. The king thought, wow, that's amazing. And so the king joined him again, and he talked, and he said, this person is truly satisfied with his life. And so the king had this other thing. He said, And he came up with this idea that all the woodcutters would need to join his army. And they would be given a sword, but they would not get paid for 30 days. And he thought, then the cobbler can't live by day. I'll see how he's doing then when he's got no livelihood. And so he went to the cobbler again, and the cobbler was singing, and he had a little food on the table, and he invited the king in again. And the king was kind of just amazed that the person was still content. He said, "How are you doing this?" He said, "Because I heard that you've had to join the army." And he said, "Well, I got the sword from the king, and it was a fine sword, but I removed the handle, and I used some of the spare wood I had, and I made a wooden sword just with the metal handle. So I put it in the sheath. And so no one can tell it's not a real sword unless I have to use it. And I took the extra metal and I sold it, and have now got enough food and drink for 30 days. So this is some of the happiest I've been." And the king's like, "How am I going to get this person?" And he thought, so he called the whole assembly the next day, and the cobbler saw that, oh, this is the first time he met the king as the king. And he thought, that's the person that's been playing all these, visiting me and playing all these tricks on me. And the king invited the cobbler forward and said, "I have someone I want you to execute, and I need you to use your sword." And the cobbler thought quickly, he said, "Well, I don't want to kill someone. That's against my faith. It's not right to kill someone. And what can I do?" And he said to the king, "Look, I'm sorry. My faith does not allow me to take another's life. And so I ask, if God wants me to take this life, let me draw my sword. But if he does not want me to take this life, turn my sword into wood." And he pulls out his sword, and everyone's amazed. Like, "Oh, wow, God says he's not to kill this person." And the king realized at that point he'd been outdone by the cobbler, and that he had outthought him with this. And so the king said, "I give up. You are a man of faith. You're a man of ethics. You're a man of compassion. I invite you to take some wealth and live comfortably for the rest of your life because you deserve it." And I think one of the great things about that story to me is that idea of faith. It's not easy, to have this, to really live by our beliefs, to live by our values in a day-to-day thing. We don't always have a king playing tricks on us, but we have, life provides struggles like the illness we're going through. We have arguments with family and friends. And it does play these tricks, but it's really important to try and stick by our values. And sometimes we need to be a bit of a trickster to keep our faith and to live truly as we wish to live.
I have been on a search for a very long time. What is it that could sustain me in a real crisis? I have a circle of small wooden beads, prayer beads, I made and use with some UU guidance. A centering, a place for anxieties, worries, fails, a place for quiet listening, contemplation, a place for compassion for others, for outside of myself. Then back to some breaths and the centering. I can repeat the circle a number of times. The more I do it, the more normative the ritual. I have hoped for much from my prayer beads, but I soon learned that they simply don't have the chops to hold me on their own. So this is how I've been thinking of it. I'm remembering our daughter Nancy's struggle to anticipate loss. Nancy, as a 12-year-old soccer player, was on a team that had won the town championship for several years. After her personal experience of her 5th win, Nancy asked plaintively, "Mom, this is not good. I need to learn how to lose. What will happen to me when my team does not win?" Right. What will happen to me? I want to be prepared. So I have been searching for those who prepare and have a store of spiritual strength to draw on. I've gone looking, listening to those who write and speak in the midst of grievous pain. Their stories are teaching me slowly. There is pain in this life that is inescapable. Existing faith tradition may not have been the anchor I thought people would lean into, that they would say sustained and upheld them so they could bear it. The reality has been that few say anything like that. Rather, it is their courage that has impressed me. The courage to name one's pain, live with it at the center of our lives, break down, leak tears, feel ineffable sadness. Then take the child to school, go to work, visit your neighbors, volunteer, do church work, live kindness, find joy. It is the courage that is part of one's character, the life already lived. There is courage knowing that we must lose so much. It is courage to remember our particular loss daily, hourly, and yet join with our common humanity along the way. So how will I be prepared? What will happen to me? Here is what I know. I am faithful in my actions. I almost never miss a UU Sunday service. I am frequently moved by my experience, but not always. Yet it is central in each week that I offer my time and talents to our church, that I feel so much love as I hear joys and concerns. I feel personally touched as I hear reflections and musical offerings. I know this to be my spiritual home. Prayer beads will not hold me up. They offer ritual. They help me develop spiritual strength. They offer a concrete sensation in the UU that I really don't understand, but I feel understands me. This works for me. It is enough.
Thank you, Jeanne, and thank you to Mariana and Ina for beautiful music. Janice Ian sings in that song, which she wrote last year at the beginning of the pandemic. She wanted to write a song of hope because she knew we were having difficult times, and the song has that faith that better times will come. And we certainly hope so. And I think most of us felt closer to those better times a month ago. The beginning of July felt like a hopeful time. The vaccinations were coming out there. We're excited about the church opening up again in September 12th, and that's still our plans. But of course, with the Delta variant, there's a lot of uncertainty, and our children are going back to school right now. And in some parts of the country, some politicians are not allowing masks, a mask mandate. And that stirs a lot of emotions in me, especially since Texas, the state I live in, and I lived in, and the state my partner and daughter live in is one of them. And there's a lot of anger and frustration right now. And our hope is subsiding, and Unitarian Universalism as a religion and as a faith is a hopeful faith. But life challenges us, the universe challenges us, as you heard in the Time for All Ages. Sometimes people challenge us, especially people in power. And you've probably heard about compassion fatigue that many people have, where it's just there's so much going on that we get burnt out trying to care for everyone. I think we're all going through anxiety fatigue, going through stress fatigue. We're going through trauma fatigue just with this pandemic as it continues going on and on and on. I know I'm exhausted. And I suspect many of us, if not all of us, are. It's hard. It's really tough. And yet, somehow we as humans, we as Unitarian Universalists, we as the community of Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Redwood City, find ways of coming together and finding joy and laughter. There was a lot of joy and laughter yesterday, and during the workday as well. I mean, some of it was just being able to see each other physically. We were all masked and distanced, but it was a good community building time that I think would be so lacking in the past. One of my other spiritual practices, and this is going to be very disappointing for you to hear, is good cartoons. And I saw this really funny cartoon about 6 or 7 weeks ago. It was when I was back in Texas. And it you've got to realize my family, we all have different ways of coping with how, if we're feeling out of sorts, how to kind of recuperate, how to rejuvenate, how to care for ourselves. Now, Natalie, my partner, whenever she's not feeling right, she said, I'll have a nap. And she encourages Natalie and Isla and I, well, why don't you have a nap? You'll feel better. Now, my mum, on the other hand, her solution to absolutely every problem in the world was having something to eat. Something to eat, you'll feel better. And I'll be sitting there the night before a big exam at college, not having studied nearly enough. Confession time here from your minister. Not having studied nearly enough. And my mum would say, why don't you have something to eat to feel better? And the snarky side of me would be, well, is that going to make me smarter and learn these quantum physics? It never did, but it probably did make me feel better. It didn't help me learn more, but it did make me feel better. And then my solution to most things is have a shower. Have a shower and you'll feel better. And there was a really funny cartoon that I was talking about earlier, and it said, when you feel everyone hates you, sleep. When you feel like you hate everyone, eat. And when you feel like you hate yourself, shower. Shower, eat, sleep, repeat. I don't think that's the worst advice. Shower, eat, sleep, shower, repeat. Shower, eat, sleep, repeat. So that's a sermon for today. That's what I have faith in. Showering, eating, and sleeping. So you can go about doing that now. But no, we do need more. And religion at its very best, it helps us pass through struggles, pass through difficult times. It helps us just cope with things that otherwise could be overwhelming with us. But this uncertainty that we're going through, it is anxiety producing. It's exhausting. And it's challenging physically, emotionally, and spiritually for all of us. But overall, I look at how we have adjusted. Now, I wasn't with UUFRC at the beginning of the pandemic, but I look at how we're coping with everything. I look at the work day yesterday. I look at the vast number of people who help behind the scenes to make worship happen. We're bringing new video cameras in. John Cooney and Grant Huberty and Carl Sloan and Steve Hill have all been working to get a sanctuary ready so we'll have high quality video. It's not quite there yet. We're right now on my webcam, but we've got some great systems in here. We've got new lighting, we're getting better sound, and we're really building for the future. Even at this time of uncertainty, we are looking past the present moment to a future, and that's what I think is most hopeful to me during this pandemic. And yes, we're exhausted, we're anxious, and we're working towards building a stronger community, a wider community, by being present, having an online ministry that'll be available to anyone with an internet connection. That's exciting. That's really exciting. And we've been kind of forced into it during the pandemic. None of us would have ever have chosen to have this pandemic. But now we're taking, what opportunities does it open up? And we're taking concrete, positive steps to move into them. But we would like a little more certainty in our life. We kind of crave as humans a certain amount of predictability and certainty because it allows us to plan for the future. But yes, most of us know how life works. It throws things at us. We end up, like me, living in a part of the world I never expected to, doing a job I never expected to, and being part of a religion I'd never heard of. We never quite know where life is going to take us in the future. And a lot of it is just being adaptable and flexible to adjusting to the opportunities that life presents. And I do not regret a thing. I love my job as a minister. I love living in Northern California. And I love Unitarian Universalism. It has given me a sense of identity and a sense of values that ask me to commit to being the person I really want to be. To really live into those values that are often challenging. The inherent worth and dignity of all people is something that's getting challenged right now when I look at people who are not taking steps, in my view, to be safe and to allow others to be safe by wearing masks in schools. And religion is about how do we interpret and find meaning in our lived experiences, including and perhaps especially those times of great difficulty. The Unitarian Universalist, white religious thinker Paul Razor, he had a book called Faith Without Certainty. And in it he says this, he says, liberal theology is not for the faint of heart. It points us in a general direction without telling us the specific destination. It refuses to make our commitments, but holds us accountable for the commitments we make. The liberal religious tradition is an invitation, not a mandate. It invites us to live with ambiguity without giving in to facile compromise, to engage in dialogue without trying to control the conversation, to be open to change without accepting change too casually, to take commitment seriously but not blindly, and to be engaged in the culture without succumbing to all of culture's values. Liberal religion calls us to strength without rigidity, conviction without ideology, openness without laziness. It asks us to pay attention. It's an eyes wide open faith without certainty. So that word faith, it can be a challenging word for many Unitarian Universalists. You know, sometimes religious terminology, we can sometimes bristle at because it's often challenges us in ways that we don't think are really helpful. I mean, we often think of faith as like this idea of belief in the unbelievable, the idea of miracles or a supernatural God, which many of us struggle with. It kind of goes against our belief in science and nature, and it's challenging. And we often think of faith as just this belief in the unbelievable, and I can't go there. And that's certainly one idea of faith. And I was incredibly disappointed when I saw this article about a church in Tennessee, and they have this big banner outside of their church. It was a Christian church, and it says, if you're wanting to stay, please remove your mask. If you're not going to remove your mask, please stay in your car and drive off. We believe in faith, not fear. We would not accept anyone to come to worship who was wearing a mask. It's like, you know, I kind of looked at that and said, oh, Jesus, please save us from your followers. And I know, inherent worth and dignity thing that we claim to. And I'm back from vacation after 4 weeks, so I'm a little punchy about some of this. And I understand some aspect of that we do not want to be limited by fear. But I think true courage is fear that has faith. I think fear and faith go together, they balance one another. Courage is not being, not being afraid. Courage is moving forward despite being afraid. And I think times fear is a good thing. I am fearful of the COVID pandemic. I am fearful of that virus, of getting ill. And I think we should be. There's many things that I'm fearful of, but I do not want to be limited by that fear. And my faith gives me the courage to find paths forward, to take the steps I need to do to be safe and to help others be safe, but allow us to move forward in some form of communal life. And the Christian minister, Samuel Miller, says, faith allows us to face everything that makes the world uncomfortable. Pain, fear, loneliness, shame, death, and acts with compassion by which these things are transformed, even exalted. They're not ignored, they're transformed. Fear can be transformed through faith. Pain can be transformed. Loneliness, shame, and death can be transformed through faith. And one of the most well-known in our culture examples of faith, and it sometimes gets missed in the story. It's the story of Moses during the Exodus from the Hebrew scriptures. You know most of the story of Moses, basically liberating the Jews from the slavery of being enslaved by the Egyptians, and they wander the wilderness, and then they come upon the Red Sea, and Moses has this conversation with God. And of course, this is, in my view, a mythical story, but I think it's a powerful story. And God says, please wave your arm over the sea and it will part, so you and the Jews can escape. And then when you get to the other side, wave your hand and the sea will close. Now, whether that happened or not important. For me, the important aspect of that, if I was told to do that, I had a huge skepticism, like I wave my hand and the sea's going to part. But Moses did it. He had faith and he followed it. And he did that. And then the Jews stepped into that parting of the sea. And then when they got to the other side, Moses waved his hand and the sea closed, so the Egyptians were unable to follow them. It's an example of faith, because it's actually about a leap of faith. I mean, faith's not easy. If you were certain that you were going to do something and the outcome was going to be good, it doesn't really require a lot of faith. You knew it. Faith is where you take that step into uncertainty. You take that first step up a staircase or down a staircase, not quite knowing where the destination is. That is what faith is. And that's why it takes courage. And that's why I put faith and courage together, because you don't know the outcome. So I identify as a person of faith, and I invite you to really explore, do you identify as a person of faith? And if you do, explore what that means. And if you don't, really find a way. Maybe you need to, translate the language to something that's more meaningful. But, I'd ask you, where do you find hope amidst uncertainty? For me, being a person of faith, it's not really about the destination. It's a journey that I am going to go on this path, because at this moment and this time, given what I know, given my values, this is the right path to take. It's not really about the destination, because faith is not about the destination. And faith can often get a little bit confused with belief. So I want to talk about that a little. The Christian thinker Harvey Cox says, faith is about deep-seated confidence. In everyday speech, we usually apply it to people we trust or the values we treasure. Belief, on the other hand, is more like an opinion. Belief can be held lightly or with emotional intensity, but they are more propositional than existential. You can believe something to be true without it making much difference in our life. But we place our faith only in something that is vital for the way we live. So that difference between belief and faith, and I'll take the example, I've flown in a couple of aeroplanes recently, and you look at an aeroplane and it doesn't really inspire you with confidence that it's going to fly. Now, my belief is it's going to fly. But, recently, one of my flights, just earlier this year, we didn't actually just enter the long tunnel that you use to go into the plane, but you just end up in this metal capsule, not quite sure what the thing looks like on the outside. We actually had to get outside and on the tarmac, and then walk up the stairs into the plane. It felt very real. It was kind of like the old days, getting on a plane, and it was exciting. And you looked at the plane and like, does that look good? And then you see the mechanic putting masking tape in the wing, and that doesn't exactly inspire you with confidence. I'm sure it was a fairly legitimate procedure, but masking tape in a plane is a worrying sign. But I got on the plane and I realized, belief is knowing the plane's going to fly. Faith is getting on the plane and flying, which you believe it will. You have this confidence that it will fly. Because faith is ultimately an acceptance of what we cannot see, but we feel deep in our hearts. And the great feminist theologian Mary Daly says, take your life and throw it as far as you can. Take your life and throw it as far as you can. Invite you, where would you like to throw your life? Where would you like to throw this community of Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Redwood City? Where would you like to throw it as far as we can together? Because that is an act of faith, taking your life and throwing it in places that you may not know. For me, part of it was coming to the States, not quite knowing what, but knowing it would be good. The first time Natalie and I came to Unitarian Universalism, that was a step of faith. Applying for seminary for me was a step of faith, changing your job, having children, committing yourself to a relationship. They are all acts of faith, because we do not know the outcome, but we hope for the best. Showing up to this Zoom session, one more Zoom after 17 months of Zoom, one more Zoom is an act of faith. You've got this, you could be at the beach, you could be at Lake Tahoe, you could be in a forest hiking. The advantage of Zoom is you can still stay in your pajamas. But coming to worship, whether it be in person or be it on Zoom, is an act of faith. You're hoping that you don't know what, but you're hoping you get some insight that might inspire you. You hope you feel some sense of connection with those present here. But faith is ultimately an envisioning of a new future beyond our current reality. That faith in change, transformation, and growth. And it's not simple, it's uncertain. That's why faith and courage are connected. Because faith helps support, nurture, and expands our emotional and spiritual life. Following our conscience, our consciousness, and our still small voice within can help renew our spirit daily. And we need that at this time. So invite each of you to look deep in your heart, your soul, your spirit, to find what does your conscience, your still small voice within, say gives you supreme trust, commitment, and passion. Because faith is about trust in an uncertain future. Reflect on those ideals, values, and principles, what they mean to you, and place those values, those principles, and those ideals at the center of our meditation and reflect on them. What do they mean for you at this point in time? This is where you will find your faith. And by bringing together all our different faiths together, we create a community of faith here at UUFRC. And we bring our faith, our principles, our values to the forefront of our consciousness. And then we commit to living those values of faith in our everyday actions. That is a faith I can believe in and strive to live to on a daily basis.